I like that idea. Okay, let's see what I got on my fucking... Hold on. I don't want to get on that. Anyone, do you have a video I can react to? Do you have any ideas? Let me know. Let's let's see. Okay. With philosophy. I like that idea. Oh, we're gonna have this guy on the show soon.
Disappointed with philosophy. Philosophy conducted by philosophers who were trained in the 20th century have made, as far as I've been able to judge, no contributions to the advance of our understanding of the physical universe. I don't have the time or energy or interest in occupying myself with those thoughts, because in my experience, they don't actually get you anywhere. They're conversations to have over beer when you got nothing else to talk about. I'm so disappointed with philosophy.
Bro. Okay, let's watch this video. This is like the laziest, like
Welcome
bottom of the barrel
to the philosophy iceberg. If you're not already familiar with the iceberg memes, it's basically a way of organizing topics related to a...
Iceberg is kind of like when you're pooping, you know? Because you see it at the first when it's crowning, that's kind of like the top. And then as it goes deeper and deeper, it just gets stinkier and stinkier. Lenny fucks with animal communication. Yeah, animal communication is cool.
Subject, from the most popular to the most obscure. Towards the start of the iceberg, you'll find a lot of philosophical ideas that you might encounter in an introductory course on philosophy. And towards the bottom of the iceberg, you'll find more obscure and complicated concepts, which get increasingly weird and spicy the further down
as
you
a
go.
format, I feel like is like the greatest academical advance we've made in years, honestly.
Yeah, boy. And sure, I know that other people have made philosophy icebergs before, but nothing quite like this one. Another one I found was by Infinity Sun on YouTube, who focused more on individual philosophers. The iceberg meme I'm using is from the Reddit user Dead Spark, and it focuses more on specific concepts rather than philosophers themselves, which I think is really interesting. As you can probably tell from the length of this video, this is a long one. So sit back, get comfy, maybe grab some snacks or a cup of coffee or tea, and strap in.
Yeah, honestly. You know, information before is like, how was I supposed to know how obscure it was without
rationalism
that little
and
diagram?
empiricism. So rationalism is the view that reason is the main source and test of knowledge. Determining truth is not understood as a sensory process, but an intellectual and deductive process. And some important rationalist figures include Descartes, Spinoza, and Leibniz. And traditionally, rationalism was contrasted with empiricism, which holds that knowledge comes primarily from sensory experience. Some important empiricist figures include Francis Bacon, John Locke, and David Hume.
Why does that sound familiar?
Solipsism. So solipsism is the idea that only one's mind is sure to exist, and that the external world or other minds cannot be known and might not even exist in the first place. I made a video talking a bit about this and how it relates to the dead internet theory and the NPC meme, if you're interested in that. Basing politics off of fiction. So I'm not totally sure what this one refers to, but my best guess is that it's how often people call any possible set of regulations or government action as literally 1984, referencing the novel by George Orwell. Democracy is good. This one is pretty self-explanatory. A political system where the public decides who governs is good. Simulation theory. So this is the idea that everything we perceive as the external world is actually a matrix-like simulation being run at some higher level of reality, and none of this is actually real. I made a video criticizing this position in the past, and chances are that's how you found my channel, since it's my most popular video.
This guy doesn't get it. He's still in the matrix.
Politics is between liberalism and conservatism. So, from what I could tell, this is basically the idea that political beliefs exist on a spectrum between left and right, which leaves out the classic second axis in the political compass of authoritarianism versus libertarianism. Knowledge is a true justified belief. So justified true belief was a popular theory of knowledge during the Enlightenment, and it basically states that in order to know that some proposition is true, you must not only believe it, but you must also have justification in believing it. And there's a famous objection to this view of knowledge, which will appear in a later layer. Science makes philosophy redundant. So the philosopher Daniel Dennett has a pretty good quote arguing against this. There is no such thing as philosophy-free science. There is only science whose philosophical baggage is taken on board without examination.
Man, shut up, dude.
Good.
Oh my god. Free speech, dude? I can't watch this, I'm sorry. Oh my god, speaking of intellectualism. It's intellectualism in South Park, dude. I mean, Family Guy, fuck, whatever it's called, dude. That shit's so intellectual. What the fuck? That's Windy Goon. Windy Goon. The insanity of salvia. Let's see this shit.
What if there was a substance that you could take that would make you live an entire lifetime as an inanimate object without even 20 minutes passing by in the Well, guess what? It exists, and it's called salvia. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back. My name is Chase. If you clicked on this video, you already know what we're talking about. I don't need to tell you. There's still no sponsor on this video, and there's a pretty high likelihood that this video gets demonetized. So the least you can do is like and comment if you enjoy, and I hope you do enjoy. Let's get into it, and thank you so much for watching. What is salvia?
This brother Kaya's time, dude.
Salvia, or salvia divinorum, is an extremely powerful hallucinogen, and the way that it affects the brain is very unique. The active compound in salvia is salvinorin A. Unlike other more typical psychedelics which bind to a whole lot of receptors in the brain, salvia really only binds to one. This is why the effects of salvia are so unique. It works in a completely different way than other psychedelics. There are 3 different subcategories.
Yeah, I want to make videos like this, but I don't want to do
psychedelics, dissociatives, and deliriants. Salvia is most commonly thrown into the dissociative category because of the extreme detachment from reality, but depending on where you look and who you ask, it's also sometimes labeled as an atypical psychedelic. Regardless of which category you want to put it under, the effects that it produces are one of a kind. The trip reports at the end are of course going to be some really bad trips, but not every salvia trip is like that. Many people report having very eye-opening and positive experiences with this stuff. In no way am I advocating for it or saying that you should try it, but I also don't want to unfairly demonize it. How was salvia used historically? Salvia divinorum is native to the Sierra Mazateca region in southern Mexico. It's named after the Mazatec people who are native to the area. The region is mountainous and forested, making it incredibly remote. Because of how remote the region is, salvia remained unknown to the rest of the world for centuries, only known and being used by the Mazatecs. The Mazatecs viewed salvia as a divine herb that could bring one into contact with the spirits. They would use salvia to treat a variety of illnesses and ailments, even something as minor as a headache. Because of their belief in the medicinal benefits and the knowledge that they can gain from the spirit realm, salvia is an incredibly important part to their culture. Often it is taken during healing ceremonies held by the Mazatec shaman at night. It's very important
you gotta be ready for that quest into the other realm.
For them to hold these ceremonies in a place that is quiet and dark because the effects of salvia are extremely subtle. So in order to receive the guidance that you are looking for during the experience, it's important to pay attention. Now, if you don't know much about salvia, but you've heard some of the trip reports posted online, me calling it subtle probably seems ridiculous. But the way the Mazatecs consume salvia is completely different from how it is used recreationally today. They ingested salvia in a process known as quitting, where you pick some of the fresh leaves off the plant, roll them up, put them in your cheek, and chew them. If you don't know how it's most commonly consumed today, we'll get to that very soon, but quitting gives a much slower onset and much milder effects. Salvia divinorum wasn't officially documented until 1939 by an American anthropologist named Jean Bissett Johnson. He observed the Mazatec Toltec shamans using salvia in their healing ceremonies and took note of its extremely unique effects. And it wasn't until nearly 50 years later in 1982 when salvinorin A was officially identified, the main psychoactive compound in salvia. In the 2000s and 2010s, salvia finally began getting more widespread attention throughout the US and the rest of the world. It being a legal hallucinogen made a lot of people curious to try it. Powerful salvia extracts began popping up in corner stores and smoke shops throughout the United States.
So sketchy.
And viral videos from the earlier days of YouTube, like driving on salvia and gardening on salvia by internet comment etiquette, gave salvia even more attention. Salvia remained legal because it worked completely differently from other known hallucinogens like LSD. It also had no potential for addiction and very low potential for abuse, so it seemed like the government didn't really care too much. That was until 2010, when Miley Cyrus took a fat rip of that stuff and it went viral. And while salvia is still federally legal, a lot of states cracked down on it soon after pretty heavily. Today, salvia is completely illegal in over half of the country, with
you can go in and
29
sell
states
something that'll
banning it
turn you into a
completely.
fucking tree.
Now, is Miley
for
Cyrus
3
really
years.
the only reason that salvia started getting banned? No. But I do think that if it wasn't for that video, it would have remained legal or decriminalized in more places, at least in the United States. Like I mentioned, salvia extracts became very popular around this time, and they started popping up in gas stations and corner stores all throughout the country. The extracts are made of dried leaf designed to be inhaled, and they are extremely potent, with many of them ranging from 60 to 100 times strength. You're supposed to use these extracts very sparingly, only using a few leaves at a time. But because nobody ever wants to do research before they do something, people tend to just pack a bowl and light it up. And shockingly, they tend to have bad experiences. If you've ever used Zaw or hit the cart, think about your first couple of experiences. They probably weren't that enjoyable. The first time I ever hit a cart, it was not a fun experience. I was extremely paranoid and anxious, my heart was pounding out of my chest, I was sweating. Now imagine during your first Zaw experience, you emptied the entire gram cart by yourself as fast as you could, just chiefing on it. That's basically the equivalent of what people tend to do with salvia extracts. It's really no surprise why there are so many horror stories about this stuff. One of the most infamous examples of a salvia experience gone horribly wrong comes from Reddit.
The massive
Around 3 years
thing.
ago, a
Yeah,
user
that
made a
thing is
post on
insane.
r/salvia titled "My Salvia Experience Gone Wrong." They included pictures of the salvia extract they used, a 5th story window busted through, the landing spot, and various injuries. In the comments, the user elaborates, writing, "I had been eager to do psychedelics for a couple of weeks after a recent mushroom experience I had been the best trip of my life. I had heard about salvia and it being legal and decided it was the easiest thing to get. I purchased the strongest salvia I could find in my city and smoked about half a bowl of 100x. My friend tells me that I was making noises of pure fear and that I kept getting up and he kept redirecting me to the bed to lay down. He says when he was reading, I sprinted to the apartment door and dodged past him, saying I needed to get outside, and I pressed the elevator button. Apparently the elevator was too slow, and I looked around and sprinted at the window and cannonballed through it, popping the frame out of the wall, landing on my feet. My friend said he heard the thud when I hit the ground. My friend sprinted down the stairs, calling paramedics on the way down, and as I was on the ground and I asked if I should try to get up, and the small crowd that gathered all told me no, I was able to tell the paramedic what I had smoked. As far as for what I remember feeling weird and wavy and laying down. The only things I remember from that point on are a feeling of panic and seeing my friend's face appear to look like melting tar. My vision was black, and after the fall, I had an experience seeing
This shit is
two of my
freaky.
cousins sitting on chairs in the middle of a clearing in the forest with a chair next to them. When I asked them who it was for, they simply told me that it wasn't for me. I have gone through over 11 surgeries since then and can no longer feel or move my feet. I cannot currently walk, but am in physical therapy to try to regain the skill. I am in constant aching pain. Unfortunately, the user would never regain their ability to walk, and it really just goes to show that making one dumb mistake can permanently alter the course of your life. Trip reports. I watched myself grow into a tree for 20 years.
Babe, look.
So, my friend and I decided to give salvia a try. During my trip, I clearly remember a sudden change in my friend's room. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a calm, nature-filled scene. It was incredibly peaceful. That's when I realized that I wasn't myself anymore. I had turned into a young tree, and I have to admit, I looked pretty cute as a sapling. But the idea that I was stuck as a sapling forever hit me hard. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I could only watch myself as a sapling. Right then and there, I found myself compelled to observe my own growth into an adult tree. It felt like an incredibly long time. No, it was a long time. It seemed like 20 years. I was powerless, unable to communicate or take any action. All I could do was look around at the ever-changing colors of the trees nearby. After 2 decades, I slowly started to hear a familiar voice. I shouted, and my friend told me to shut the fuck up, although I couldn't see him. He eventually tapped me, and in an instant, my whole world snapped back into place. My friend was there, engrossed in watching Markiplier, which was the voice I was also hearing. I asked him what happened,
Imagine
and he casually said that I had been...
tree, like you don't know what's happened. You're like, your life is slipping past you, and you just hear, "Hello, everybody, it's Markiplier." What a thing to pull you back.
Lying on his bed for about 5 minutes making moaning noises. I thought he was joking, but he swore it was true. I recounted my surreal experience to him, but he just laughed, apparently not quite buying my story. I don't care if nobody believes me, but bet your ass I'm not trying that shit again. I feel so sorry for trees now. Has anyone else had this happen to them, where time seems so much slower? Salvia trip report. Lived 15 years as a ceiling fan. First and only trip I'll ever have. I took a hit of salvia laying alone in my bed.
Like, this shit
The
is
trip
going to
lasted for
change you
27
forever.
minutes, but felt like 15 actual years. I experienced every second of every minute of every hour, of every day, of every month, of every year without a pause. Every night, I couldn't sleep because I was an object, so I would just wait at night for them to awaken. I still remember this trip like it was yesterday, every single part of it. The first year, there was a semi-fat man who was bald on top and had gray hair around the side of his head like a horseshoe. Yeah.
Psychedelics. Just, if you're ever taking psychedelics, remember Lenny. He'll have your back.
He had a wife with blonde hair who was pregnant and would routinely walk around the house
the
naked.
details in these
They would
trips are
watch TV
insane.
together every night and often get intimate on the couch during their
That would
show.
be sick!
The first
No,
3
imagine
years of the
seeing
new
him.
year, they are gone because the woman is in the hospital giving birth. Mind you, I was left here alone for
That's why
3
I like
days
to. I
waiting
kind of
for
like to
them to
think
come
that,
back.
like when you take psychedelics,
This wouldn't
you're-
happen
and,
often
like,
though,
these
since
kind
throughout
of
my
dissociate
lifetime,
ones,
they
it's like
never
you're
went on
entering a
vacation
different
because
dimension.
they didn't
Like your
have much money to
consciousness is like,
spend,
you know, it's like
and they
astral
always
projecting
complained
almost.
about bills and money as well. They came back with a baby boy. The entire
Yeah, it would be
lifetime,
scary.
I couldn't register what any of their names were, but I often heard most of their conversations. It was just hard for me to register because I was a
That's
ceiling
crazy
fan.
to think, though.
One day,
Imagine
he
every
got
object in
changed
your room
directly
is,
underneath me on the couch, and when
is
I looked
somebody
down,
on
it was
salvia?
just blank because I had no idea what it would be like to change a baby. Throughout the years, I watched the son grow up. I realized he was autistic and had a speech impediment, often mouthing sentences and only saying the last word verbally. However, he did become quite handsome with blonde curly hair. I watched the dad, now completely bald, get fatter and fatter. I watched the mom let herself go. I observed countless nights of them inviting their church friends over and talking about pointless subjects while drinking wine. Mostly, I couldn't even understand. The last year, things started acting out of normal and it was terrifying. The boy's grandma, woman's mom, died. And even though she never visited and was never even spoken about, the mom sat the autistic son down to explain to him how death works and why they won't see grandma again. As she was explaining, her voice echoed through the room and her words turned demonic, and repeatedly kept saying stuff like, "Grandma's never coming back. You will never see grandma again. She's gone." And then quickly everything changed back to normal and she walked down the hallway like nothing happened. Also, I never knew what was down that hallway because I was perpetually stuck in that living room. Final weird event happened.
It's so unnerving. I don't know. Like what if it's just like some traumatic memory that's just being like forever just sent into the universe, and you're just intercepting it with the salvia, and you're just being stuck in it. Objects you've never seen as living. Wait, hold on. Cut it off. It makes people see life in inanimate objects that they've never seen before. Yeah, which is interesting. Because I'm an animist to a degree. Like, I feel like everything is alive to some degree. That's my own personal spiritual belief. And this is just like wild though.
Before my lifetime ended, when the mom put 3 oranges on the ground, then walked away. Then when she completely left, the oranges began spinning around in a circle. Then when she would come back, the oranges would suddenly stop spinning and she would put them back in the kitchen. Then finally, the dad went to go turn me on for the first time in my life, and I started spinning slowly.
Dude, what?
After the 5th rotation, I started going into third person out of the house in a bird's eye view.
Okay.
A second later, in a sudden flash, I was laying back down on my bed. It took a solid 5 minutes to realize where I was and who I was. If I told you guys everything that happened in this trip, it would be much longer than the dictionary. Please ask questions or remember everything. I was just trying to say the important stuff without making it too confusing. Moral of the story, don't do salvia. Pure, desolate terror. Firstly, I should say...
the only thing is I'm a little weary because I don't trust Reddit at all. Like, I don't trust anything anybody on Reddit says. So, like, I don't know. Some people might be just out here writing creepypastas. You know what I mean?
But I'm not new to drugs, though I'm hardly a veteran either. I acquired a 10-gram bag of ordinary leaf through the internet. A friend who studies various forms of shamanism had talked about it.
Yeah,
I have been meditating deeply.
I don't know, with these, like, hardcore, like, psychedelics that, like, send you into, like, spirit realms and shit, I feel like you need, like, an actual, like, wise-ass shaman. You need, like, someone who is a experienced practitioner in some form of magic. Otherwise, like, any, like, bad things could just happen.
Recently, and have felt all of my previous trips to be spiritual experiences rather than just for fun. I'm also a fairly cautious and responsible...
I think that's the right way to look at psychedelics, as spiritual experiences instead of just for fun. Or not even just spiritual, but, like, I don't know, transformative experiences. It's not like a novelty thing.
So I thought, adult. In other words, I thought I could handle it. I was wrong. My first few experiences were very mild. I experienced a tugging sensation down and leftwards. The third time, I had a vague sensation of being at the bottom of a flight of stairs, encouraging someone at the top to join me. The person at the top of the stairs turned out to also be me. All of these attempts required a great deal of smoking, enough to make me choke. It should be noted that I am not a smoker. I gave up for a week or two before borrowing a bong from my friend. Once I had this, I removed all obstacles in my room.
Not a smoker, dude. He's like choking on the joints and shit. He's like, okay, bong time. That shit's gonna send him.
Focus my thoughts and packed a large bowl. I took one lungful with the lighter held over the bowl the entire time. I held it in and barely managed to drop the lighter before all hell broke loose. I was aware of falling in through my own mouth and down a tunnel fast. I was aware that the tunnel was bottomless. Looking up, the walls of the tunnel were made up of my own face, repeated infinite times, each contained within the other. Kind of like when you have 2 mirrors facing each other. Suddenly, I became aware of the rest of the room as well. It was almost dark. The room was above the tunnel. The room was an isolated box. Outside the box, there was nothing.
I don't know, it was like, all these trips seemed like, I can't imagine spending thousands or like a bunch of years outside of your body and it not being traumatic. You know what I mean?
Nothing at all. I was struck by the most visceral panic I have ever experienced. It It was even worse, and I'm really ashamed of this, than when I was fighting and failing to save my late wife's life after a fatal accident several years ago. The sheer desolation was crushing, paralyzing. I'm afraid I just can't express it properly in words. My room was a box that contained all that was left of the universe, and I was rapidly falling away from it. Worse, by now something was sucking me away from it. Worse still, the lip of the tunnel, the uppermost of my faces, was collapsing, sucking my room, which was the universe, in behind me. I was aware that if I allowed this to happen, I would be responsible for the end of everything, all because I thought I was some sort of fucking spiritual voyager. I really can't express how terrifying this felt. I finally found the strength to fight against it. At first, I merely struggled helplessly, but I soon realized the only escape was back up through the tunnel. I climbed up and up. I could feel my poor grip against the walls of my throat as I climbed. Finally, I fought my way to my mouth. I should mention that my conscious body was the same size as the one I was climbing out of. I forced my hands through, pried the jaws open, and squeezed out. During this, the feel of my teeth and my breaking face were very real against my hands and body. This was only the first of literally thousands. On each exit, I was wheeled around to the left. On each exit, I grew more tired and more desperate. I felt I was losing the battle and the universe would be swallowed up by the imploding tunnel. I realized I wasn't quite climbing in the right way. I made one last, desperate effort. This time, my real body, outside of the trip, jumped off the bed and headed for the ceiling via some shelves. Now I was aware of the real world in the peripheral vision of my trip. I struggled out of my own mouth for the final time, but this time I ended up in an entirely different tube. I struggled through this tube, plunged into freezing cold water, and climbed into another tube. This tube led to the final exit. Again, one which I could vividly feel with my hands, and which I now know was the bowl of salvia. Suddenly, I was back in my real, singular body and aware. I ran and switched on the light. I took the tube of the bong out of my mouth and put it down in the farthest corner of the room. I went and sat on my bed, but still didn't feel free of it yet. I realized I was still holding my breath. It took a huge physical...
Dude, that was just in one, hit? That's insane. God, just cut back to reality, and he's like, if I don't exhale this, I'm fucked.
To exhale, and then all of my concentration to keep breathing. My body was convulsing and trying to tell me I was spinning around to the left. Gradually, I became present enough to look at the clock.
Just with one
I'd been
hit.
gone for barely 2 minutes. The feeling of desolation didn't dissipate for another hour. I wanted to phone my girlfriend and have her come around, but at the same time, I realized I was safe now, and it wasn't fair to scare her with this. Not ever. Oddly enough,
that's a fucking high-key traumatic experience. I feel like... I don't feel like it'd be fine to call your partner. Just for, comfort, you know? Just, regroup a little bit, and then just, be in the same room with, another human being. I feel like that's not the worst thing.
Several hours later, I was sound asleep and awoke the next day feeling fine. This is the polar opposite to any other substance I've tried. Everything else gave me a sense of connection with my surroundings. This sent me inwards. Everything else made me more positive about the universe. This made me question its very existence. I know this stuff sounds like a high school kid's horror essay, but that's what I experienced. The really odd things are these. My experience lasted for several hours, and yet in the real world, it only lasted for 2 minutes. It all felt 100% real. No trippy tracers, no blurriness, real as day. I'm sorry I can't write well enough to give a better sense of how terrifying this was. I won't be taking salvia again. Mostly, I think I'll stick to meditation, cups of tea, and a quiet life. If I've taken one positive thing from salvia, it's this. My life with my future wife, the family we want to start, all my beautiful friends, and the cool stuff I've yet to do, all of this is more important to me than catching a brief glimpse of nirvana through the use of mind-bending substances. If salvia gave a longer trip, I wouldn't have gotten out.
That shit was so bad it set him straight. Guy's laces on straight. Damn. Yeah, that's scary.
Accidental salvia and walking the plank. This happened in summer of 2018.
Accidental? That's terrifying. God, I feel like such a I don't know. I feel so I don't know how to react to things. Like I feel like such an idiot. What? But seriously, like imagine just don't touch salvia. Yeah, no, don't plan. I'm not planning on it. God no, it's just scary. Yeah, I'm a straight up commentator. I'm a reaction YouTuber. Just checking out how my TikTok is doing. This is like practice, you know? I'm like practicing, preparing. Preparation for the big guns. Yep. For when I, streaming is something, skill you gotta learn. Oh.
Decided to trip one night, dropped 2 tabs, had a pretty standard trip. Played Fortnite for the first time ever with my brother's friend on voice chat, pretty hilarious. Had some visions of Hindu gods and goddesses while laying in the dark.
Cool.
Normal trip stuff, had a great time. Towards the end of the peak, I started to feel kind of nauseous, so I decided to hit the za. I know it's usually not the greatest idea on psychs, and I don't recommend it if you're not a fairly experienced tripper, but I'd done it before and it's always helped my nausea, so I load the bowl up and get to it. Immediately, I get this rush of anxiety that seems to have no reason behind it. I figure that it's just typical paranoia, so I keep on going. Towards the end of the bowl, I start to feel...
Just a typical weed paranoia. Continues. I mean, we've all been there. I mean, still. Fuck.
Weird. Something's not right. I'm listening to Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd.
Dude, okay, first off, this guy is cool as fuck. He's seeing Hindu gods, dude. He's listening to Dark Side of the Moon, playing Fortnite. This is the definition of a chiller.
Song currently playing, Brain Damage, starts to feel absolutely fucking sinister. I feel like it's directed towards me. Some of the lyrics, if you don't know the song, are, "The lunatic is in the hall,
yeah,
the lunatic is in my head. You lock the door and throw away the key. There's someone in my head, but it's not me." Keep those lyrics in mind and imagine that in the background of everything that follows.
That song is haunting. That's a haunting song. God, dude, I bet it's gonna send him into some PTSD attack every time he hears that song now.
So I'm pretty freaked out, and I stupidly decide to finish the bowl, put everything away, and try to ride it out. I finally cache it, but then I start feeling the slightest twinges of that salvia book feeling. You probably know what I mean if you've ever done it. It's like your body is a book and someone is ruffling the pages down it eternally. Super weird and uncomfortable. The second I feel it, my mind flashes back and I realize my mistake. 2 or 3 days before, I had used some 200x salvia out of that same piece, and I guessed that I just didn't finish the whole bowl. The second I realized this, absolute panic sets in. I did not want to trip on salvia anytime soon, and I definitely didn't want to do it on 2 fucking tabs. But I saw
2 tabs of fucking acid. Dude. It's a miracle he didn't have like a stroke or something.
Somehow managed to rein myself in a bit, and I just start laying down. I look at my feet, and they're, how do I describe this? They're liquefying. And
okay, the only thing, salvia, OCD, probably not mixed, but maybe, maybe it'll prepare, it like prepares, maybe it'll prepare me, like, I'll be ready, I'll be like, balls zen about it.
Floating upwards towards my ceiling. Time has slowed down immensely, and I can feel my memories and cognition slipping away as always happens on salvia. I look at my ceiling, and the geometry is just insane. Everything on my blank white ceiling is crystallized, complex, and I know it wants to hurt me. And then, like a train entering a tunnel, the salvia fully hits. I don't entirely know how to describe what happened. I didn't fully break through and lose all contact with reality. I had some small concept of where I was and that I should stay there, but that was about it. What I saw around me became nothing more than colors, shapes, and objects, with no reference. Mentally, and this is all especially metaphor, my consciousness became a blank time. My understanding of quantum mechanics is spotty, but the definition of a Planck time is the smallest unit of time possible with our current understanding of physics. For reference, that's 5.39 x 10 minus 44 seconds. I became a personified version of that. It felt like I was a grain of sand on the crest of a wave that was hitting a shore. Every time the wave hit the shore, it created the universe at that particular moment. Then it repeated the cycle over and over again. I became one of these grains, and it was horrifying. It was hell, hitting the shore over and over and over again, begging to be freed. I could tell that there were other things like me around me, but I couldn't perceive anything about them besides...
Imagine you're walking out like in real life. You're talking to people. You're like, I did salvia, and you're like describing your trip, and then the guy's like, grain, you were a grain of sand? And he's like, how'd you know that? And he's like, dude, I was grain 3334000. I was right next to you, dude. You don't fucking remember me? And you're like, oh shit! That'd be crazy.
that they were trapped eternally the same way I was. Eventually, bits and pieces started returning. The place I'm in, it is called the bedroom. I am a human and live on Earth. Each piece that returned was joyous to me. I had gone through literal hell and come out on the other side clean. I wish, partially, that it hadn't happened, since it was so utterly horrifying, but at the same time, I'm glad I had this experience. It changed the way I looked at the world and how I looked at time. Hopefully you're doing well, my fellow Planck units. The rest of the trip wasn't the best. I was just trying to figure out what the hell my consciousness had been through until I fell asleep. As far as after effects, I was a bit out of it for maybe 2 days after this happened, though it didn't interfere with any of my daily activities. Just made me feel a bit less social than usual. I had another trip a few weeks later on one tab, and it was good. At one point, I saw some geometry on my backpack and had a bit of a disgusted feeling because it somehow reminded me of the salvia experience, but besides that, it was alright. I was lucky that I didn't freak out. If you smoke salvia, clean out your pipe after you're done so you don't accidentally blast off like I did. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this stuff as interesting as I do and that you enjoyed the video. If you
I feel bad, I'm like leeching this guy's content. Like, you know? Yeah, I'm adding commentary. You guys should subscribe to this guy. Banger.
Imagine if there was a drug that turned your reality into a real-life survival horror game. And over the course of the next 72 hours, you would experience horrors beyond your comprehension.
Dude, no way, is that fucking Momo?
Over the course of the next 72 hours, you would experience horrors beyond your comprehension. Well, guess what? It exists, and there's probably some of it growing near your house right now. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back. My name is Chase. Today we're talking about one of my favorite topics, Datura. There's no sponsor on the video, so like, comment, and subscribe if you want to support.
Do you think this guy's tried it? I feel like if you research it enough, like, it's just inevitable, you know? Like, at a certain point, you just gotta try it. I don't know. trying to think of a good example, but nothing that isn't morbid is coming to mind, so I'm just going to press play.
Channel, it really helps a lot. Manscaped, Raid Shadow Legends, hit my line, I really need to check. Without further ado, let's get into it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy.
Okay, like you're a detective, right? You just like research murder all day, or you're a true crime channel. Like, at what point are you like, shit, maybe I should try it, you know? Like, at a certain point you need personal experience, you know?
Before we get into anything else, I think it's important to explain what Datura actually is, how it works in the body, and the effects that it produces. Datura is a hallucinogen, but it belongs to a specific subcategory of hallucinogens known as deliriants. You see, most psychedelics just distort your perception of reality, even if you're seeing very vivid hallucinations. There is somewhat of an underlying comfort that you took something that made you feel this way, and ideally you're going to be back to normal in a few hours. With deliriants, there is none of that. Your perception of reality isn't just altered, it's completely destroyed. You will forget everything about yourself, who you are, what your name is, maybe even that you're human at all. Your surroundings will look completely alien to you, even if it's a place that you've been
Dude, why would anyone want to do this ever? I don't get it. Like, a part of me is like, adventurous and it's like, nah, I'd win, I can do this, but like any other logical part of my brain is like, shut the fuck up, dude. Like, I don't know.
million times before. It could even be your own house and you won't be able to recognize it. You see, the chemical compounds in Datura bind to the acetylcholine receptors in the brain. Acetylcholine is a vital neurotransmitter that sends signals throughout your nervous system. When too many of those acetylcholine receptors get blocked, a lot of bad things start to happen. At first, your mouth's going to get really dry, and then your vision is going to begin to blur. Then,
I think that's how I figured it out. Wait, what? Have you ever tried it? Like, come on. How can you call yourself a DMT cover or drug cover if you've never even tried it? Like, and then he tries it and he regrets it.
your heart's going to begin to race, and because acetylcholine plays an important role in muscle control, you're going to find it very hard to move and even breathe. Eventually, you end up in full-blown delirium, where you're seeing and hearing things that aren't really there, but everything you're experiencing is completely indistinguishable from reality. This stuff can very easily kill you. Your brain is essentially firing on error mode and is one step away from shutting down completely. If you saw my DPH video, this is probably all sounding very familiar. Datura and diphenhydramine are both deliriants, and the effects they produce are extremely similar. The difference is that in Benadryl, the only anticholinergic substance is diphenhydramine. Every tablet is exactly 25 milligrams of DPH, sometimes 50 if you get the extra strength, but you know how much you're taking. With Datura, there are 3 anticholinergic compounds: scopolamine, hyoscyamine, and atropine. All 3 of these chemicals have some medical uses on their own which aren't important. All you need to know is that all of them are anticholinergic and in high doses are deliriants. And you are flooding your body with insane doses of all 3 of them at the exact same time. Doesn't that sound like a great idea? On top of that, because it's not a medicine, the amount of each one of these compounds in every individual Datura plant vary greatly. Obviously, you shouldn't try to reach an altered state with Benadryl either. If you're considering that, I strongly urge you to reconsider your life and make smarter decisions. But at least with DPH, you actually know how much you're taking. With Datura, it's a complete shot in the dark. You have no idea how much of these compounds you're actually ingesting. Of course, a lethal dose of either of these is gonna be different for everyone, but needless to say, overdosing and dying is much easier to do when you have no idea how much of something you're taking. Now that we know what Datura is and how it works, let's talk about some of the really fascinating ways that it was used throughout history. For the Aztecs, Datura played an important role in their ceremonies. Shaman occasionally took Datura to communicate with the spirit world and seek guidance outside of the mortal realm. Datura was also administered to people who were chosen for the Aztecs' ritualistic sacrifices.
See, I'm Mayan,
because
so like
shockingly,
these guys
it
are
is
kind
way
of
easier to
Mayans.
convince somebody to willingly die when they have no idea what's going on around them and can barely move. Datura also played an important role in Chumash ceremonies, but for much less morbid reasons. In their culture, adolescent-aged boys would drink a Datura brew in order to transition them into adulthood. The effects
Good old-fashioned
were meant
rite
to
of
show the child
passage.
glimpses of the future and communicate their purpose in life. It was an important ceremony for them, and it was seen as a rite of passage into manhood. In my opinion, the most interesting
This sounds fascinating, but I think a lot of like, I feel like they probably have the doses down pretty good. Like if it's a tribe and they're doing that like on a regular basis, I'm pretty like they probably know like exactly how much to give you. Like because he's talking about how it's like all like kind of like an unknown variable, but like if you're doing it at that consistent of a basis, like you gotta know what's up, right? I don't know.
historical use of Datura comes from Europe around the 16th century. If you're a normal person, the first thing that comes to mind when you think about witches is a flying broomstick. Well, this
Yeah, not me, you know. I'm not normal. I'm not with the grain. I'm crazy, you know. Yeah.
myth didn't just come out of nowhere. You see, the witches were actually hallucinating on Datura. In 1458, a man known as Abraham the Jew published an interesting account of him meeting a witch in Austria. The witch had an ointment, and both she and Abraham proceeded to spread said ointment over their pulse points. Abraham had an incredibly vivid experience of flying through the air and visiting a place that he had been wanting to visit. Eventually, he wakes back up in this witch's house, and she tells him all about her experience of flying through the night sky. Abraham wanted to investigate this farther and asked the witch to apply the ointment only to herself and allow him to observe. And big surprise here, she actually didn't end up flying. Instead, she passed out unconscious on the floor and laid there for multiple hours. When she awoke, she told Abraham more tales about her travels. You can actually find recipes for witches' flying ointment in works published in the 16th century. To make the ointment, various ingredients are
A little
needed,
crafts,
but
you
it
know?
notably mentions
A little something me and the company can do. All right. Get the order on this.
the use of deadly nightshade, which is usually a nickname used for belladonna, which is kind of a sister plant to Datura. But Datura is also a deadly nightshade, and it was growing in Europe in the 16th century, so they likely used either of them. And if you're wondering how they made it into an ointment, they used fat from infants, specifically unbaptized infants.
Dude, cannot be true. Okay. There's so much made up shit about witches. Fat from unbaptized infants. That's fucking comical.
That's cool, I guess. Also, on the subject of history, the Far Cry franchise is essentially history at this point because they haven't released a good game in nearly 10 years.
That's true.
In Far Cry 3, players experience vivid visions after ingesting a sacred plant brew. And although the substance that the player ingests is never specifically named, the ritual and the experience as a whole greatly mirrors Datura. A more direct connection to Datura comes in Far Cry 5. In the game, there is a cult known as Eden's Gate, which is led by the game.
Oh, what's up?
Antagonist Joseph Seed. Seed and other cult members
Sounds
use a
fun, yeah.
substance known as bliss to convert people into joining the cult. You can find the chemical structure of bliss written throughout various locations in the game, and the chemical structure of bliss is the exact same as scopolamine, one of the anticholinergic compounds found in Datura. Probably the most infamous case of real-world Datura usage can be found on Reddit.
Classic,
in 2017,
Always
u/Flop
Reddit.
made a post to r/drugs. Finally got my hands on some Datura. How much should I take? Hi guys, I finally got some Datura to try out. I'm free tomorrow and I have the house to myself, so I am really excited to try the effects of this interesting plant. I have around 60 seeds, some dried flowers, and leaves. How much should I take for a nice first time trip? I was thinking of crushing up some seeds and making a tea with them, Drink the tea and smoke a couple of leaves while the tea is starting to take effect. Would 15 seeds
Or slash drugs. No way that's ever still up.
tell me a regular dose is around 10 to 20, but I've seen some talk about 30 plus seeds. Thanks guys. Despite everyone in the comments telling him that this was a horrible idea and that he should take none of it, he proceeded anyways. Edit. Slowly drank the tea in half an hour. Didn't taste too bad. Not feeling much yet.
Oh yeah,
I'll check back in with you guys in an hour or so.
Reddit's kind of a hellscape,
Would
dude.
be
Anything
pretty
goes on there.
indicative of how the trip was going. He would leave a comment under his own post simply writing, google.com, how normal again, stop now, and under a gif of two mammoths fighting in totally accurate battle simulator posted to r/gaming, he would leave the comment, please, these big dog are fighting, not okay. And that was the last anyone ever heard from you/flipandflop. What happened to him remains a mystery to this day. Some people dismiss this whole thing as a troll, others believe that he got medical help and ended up forgetting his Reddit login, and other people believe that he didn't manage to get medical help and that he is no longer with us. Now that we've talked about all that cool stuff, let's read a few people's real experiences taking Datura. Datura, a true hallucinogenic. Deliriants are true hallucinogens. Datura can turn even the most experienced psychonaut into a blubbering little baby. Not something for beginners, nothing like acid or shrooms. Years ago, at the end of high school summer break...
Dude, Datura makes me want to do Salvia. I mean, this shit is fucked up. Don't do this shit. Salvia sounds like a fucking walk in the park compared to this.
Up some leaves and drank it as a tea. They grow everywhere up here, and we knew a field close to a trail we would bike through that had tons of them. That summer, a friend and I would bike to his place most afternoons and usually just chill in his backyard for a bit, smoke a few bowls, and just shoot the shit. We found him covered in puke, only in his underwear, and sitting on the grass having full-on coherent conversations with invisible people. He appeared to have lost touch with reality, so we got him inside and babysat him for a bit. He opened up every drawer appearing to search for something, drank a glass of water, then proceeded to smash it on the ground, turned on his shower and just stared at the running water. He would do bizarro shit like that until he eventually fell asleep, periodically waking up to talk to the invisible people. His parents were out of town for the week, so he had the house all to himself. Unfortunately, both of us had work in the AM, so we could not stay the night. He did have moments of lucidity and told us he was fine and he would just sleep the trip off. The next day, he was not home. We thought he sobered up and went out. His bike was gone. Well, it turns out he disappeared for a few days. Heard back from him 3 days later. He said the trip only started to wear off after the 3rd day. It wasn't until a week he felt normal and the hallucinations completely stopped. After that trip though, he was never really the same. He used to be a really charismatic, funny, and extroverted person.
Sad.
He became more closed off, more serious, darker, and had a weirder sense of humor. On the surface he seemed normal, but those of us that knew him could tell something inside him changed. He hung out less, and when he did, after a few beers and a couple of joints, he would start to talk about spiritual matters, saying shit like how humanity has lost touch with our spiritual
Dude, it
essence.
just sounds like you fucking woke up, dude. Start listening to the words of Lenny, brah. No. Or he's in a psychosis, but you know, divine madness.
And speaking of higher levels of existence, he would also go on about philosophical shit. Some of it did sound quite profound, other stuff a bit nutty. He dropped his pre-med university program, scholarship and all. Eventually we lost touch. He traveled a bit, did an English teaching gig in Vietnam for a few years. Last I heard, he was apparently living in a small town on the west coast and co-owns a small landscaping business. Apparently he called the crypto bubble well. He was posting about Bitcoin in 2012. Still weird and posts spiritual based content. I still creep his Facebook every
Okay, well now you're just hating on him for being a little enlightened, dude.
Fuck
off,
my
bro.
Datura related post. Microdosing Datura / how I went crazy for a year. I'd been experimenting lightly with Datura for a while.
This shit is evil, dude. Dark evil.
I'd add a bit of datura leaf to a bowl of weed, but that was about it. I never wanted a full-on trip, I just thought it gave an interesting buzz. So I started growing the plants, and they make a ton of seeds. I started to eat 3 seeds a day.
Dude, what the fuck? Why?
Kind of like weed, but one thing I noticed was
I just saw
that
popping
after a month,
seeds.
I'd start to trip out a bit. Things would just feel really dreamy. It's hard to describe. I figured maybe all the seeds I'd taken had started adding up and hadn't left my system. So I'd stopped taking the datura seeds for a few weeks. Rinse and repeat. Well, one day, after maybe 6 months of microdosing, I go into full-blown delirium. I remember being on the computer when something told me to Google a random string of characters. I did, and the only image that returned was a photo of the Arch Linux terminal. Note, I work in programming. That showed exactly what I was playing on my iPod, like I was being monitored. It was all downhill from there.
That's fucking
Long
creepy
story
as
shorter,
fuck.
a couple of trippy incidents. I thought I was telepathically talking to a famous actress. Then I thought I
Okay.
was telepathically talking.
These guys are acting like all this normal shit is weird. Like, oh, yeah, fuck, he's talking so telepath. I was telepathically talking to an actress. Like, dude, that's fucking normal, dude. Talking to yourself, dude, normal!
To a woman who worked for the government. This went on for weeks. Then I thought it was actually an AI the whole time. I remember once closing my eyes and swinging an axe at a piece of plank in front of my foot so I could test the precision on the AI and prove it didn't want to hurt me.
It's normal.
Yeah, I nearly chopped off my toes. I also believed there were cars following me. Yeah, I was in full-blown paranoia, except I thought they were there to help me.
Can a man have a little paranoia these days without being fucking ashamed of himself? Jesus
But it took
Christ.
a whole year for them to wear off completely. Took just as long for me to figure out that I was having delusions and nothing from the past year had been real. I ended up being diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic after having MRIs and stuff, but I refused any meds. Half of me still not believing I was hallucinating, and the other half scared of what the effects might be from the medication. About 2 years after the whole thing happened, I was back to normal. Obviously, it's hard to be sure what the hell happened there. Was it the datura, or did I have a mental breakdown from something else?
It's possible
I
psychedelics
can't say
triggered,
for sure.
like,
I
latent.
don't take datura anymore though,
Schizophrenic
and I still
tendencies.
smoke a lot of weed and things are back to normal. Everyone says don't take datura. Listen to them. Truly the devil's plant. Ever since I heard of datura from a friend at school a few years ago, I have always wanted to get a hold of some, asking dealers I know from around town. But I was never successful, as many people I asked didn't even know what it was. So after a while, I gave up hope and continued with the usual smoking grass every day, occasionally scoring some ketamine or opium to make life a little more interesting. Then last year, I finally got a chance to try the stuff. One of my friends told me he had gone to stay with his grandparents for a week and noticed a plant near their house that looked a lot like datura. So he went over to it, and sure enough, he saw the small, spiky pods growing near the bottom of the plant. He himself didn't want to try any because he always feared any sort of hallucinogen because of the risk of a bad trip, but knew I had been wanting to try it for quite some time. So he picked one of the magical pods and wrapped it up in cellophane and brought them back for me. The bastard wouldn't hand it over unless I paid him $20, but I figured it would be well worth it. I couldn't wait to try them. First thing I did was found someone who would be a sitter for me, and that sitter was the most trustworthy friend I know. Let's call him Steve. I asked my mom if he could sleep over, and she said it was fine. So the next day, Steve came over around noon, and I got the seeds out of the pod and counted 37. I heard it only took 10 or 15, and I wanted to have more so I could trip another time or sell them, so I decided to take 15. Me and Steve went up to my room to take them. We put on some music and sat down in my beanbag chairs. I was feeling confident that things were going to go smoothly, mostly just because Steve was there with me. He was a very responsible person who I felt very safe and secure with. Of course, I had a little butterflies in my stomach because I was taking something new, but it was mostly excitement, a total I can't wait feeling. As Steve and I talked, I decided it was time and pulled the sandwich baggie out of my pocket. I got all the seeds in my palm and looked at them. Little teardrop-shaped things, darkish brown, almost black. I thought to myself, here goes nothing, and licked my palm to get all the seeds stuck to my tongue, chewed them up a bit, and swallowed. As they went down, I got this overwhelming feeling of finally. I have finally taken this crazy datura, and in time I will be experiencing it. All I could do now is relax, keep the best state of mind I possibly could, and wait for things to kick in. I went down to the kitchen with Steve to get a drink of water, and then I went to the bathroom. No noticeable effects. Steve suggested we play video games while we wait for it to kick in. We went back up to my room and played Mario Kart 64 and snacked on some Doritos. Eventually I started to feel different. A lot like when you need to stretch really bad, but in my whole body. Mouth is getting dry, very similar to the cotton mouth after smoking a blunt. Steve is winning the game and I am losing my grip on the controller, and I can't seem to keep the A button pushed down. After about 10 minutes, I feel much different.
Of course, blame it on Datura.
I'm wondering why Steve is in my room playing video games. He reminds me that he is sleeping over to watch me because I took Datura. Right after he says this, a wave of shock and fear run down my body like goosebumps, for I had completely forgotten the reason he was there and that I had taken anything, although I do recall it. I am now, needless to say, in shock at what just happened with my brain. I look at Steve and say, calm me down, and somehow Steve knew exactly what to do. He just smiled at me in this reassuring smile and said, don't worry man, you're gonna have a blast. This made me feel incredibly better, and my mood shifted. After this, things seemed to go back to normal, and I asked Steve to stop playing video games and go downstairs with me. We go downstairs into my kitchen, and I pull a full pitcher of cherry Kool-Aid from the fridge. Steve got 2 glasses, then we went back into my living room and sat down on the couch. I pour the both of us a glass, and we sip it while watching TV. After I finish my glass, I pick up the pitcher and gulp it down halfway. I am very thirsty, but the drink doesn't seem to quench my thirst at all. It seems to glide over the surface of my mouth, leaving it dry still.
Man, that's fucked up, bro. The Datura demon is doing fucked up shit, man. Like, okay, sending someone into psychosis for a year, you know, making people think mammoths are dogs, that's all fucking chill, you know? That's too far.
Try my best to ignore it and
like,
continue watching
that's just
TV.
like petty.
I tell Steve I'll be right back and walk to the bathroom. While I piss, I look at the picture above my toilet. It's a cartoon of a polar bear lying on its back in the water, holding a wine glass like it fell asleep from being drunk. The concept makes me want to laugh. It seems like the dumbest cartoon in the world to me, and its location is just as random as its contents. I think to myself, why the fuck do we have a picture of a drunk polar bear in our bathroom? For some reason, it seems near hysterical to me. I walk out of the bathroom and go back to the couch with Steve. As soon as I sit down, my mom walked out of the kitchen and tells us she's going to work and to behave. She'll be back around 10. Steve and I say goodbye,
He's like high
and
off
she
Datura.
leaves. Perfect. Now we have the house to ourselves. Nothing much more seems to be happening. I have finished the pitcher of Kool-Aid and gone to the bathroom 2 more times. Steve says to go to the kitchen and refill the pitcher with water in case I feel like I'm going to dehydrate. It seems like a responsible idea, so I go into the kitchen and refill it with water and put ice cubes in it. I walk back into my living room to find Steve had left, and the TV has been turned off. The entire house is dead silent. Then I hear the TV go back on, but the screen is blank, and I hear Steve saying, "Hey, I'm over here." I realize that he's calling me from out in my backyard, so I put my shoes on and go outside. At first, I scanned my backyard for him, but couldn't see him, and I couldn't hear him anymore. I suddenly get the idea that Steve had come over for a hide-and-seek game. At this point, I have absolutely no idea that I have taken anything, so I run into the yard looking around for him. Then I speak, come out, wherever
you know
are."
the
And
Fae
right when I
did, or
say
just
this,
fucking
my
with
voice
people
sounds
when you're on
very
that shit.
different, like a person who has gone totally insane. This starts to scare me very much, and Steve is nowhere to be found. I look way across to the other end of my yard. My yard is only about 100 foot by 200 foot area, but now it was like a soccer field size. And at the other end, I see my dog's pen. a fenced-in area in the corner with all my friends who are straight edge that stopped being friends with me when I started smoking pot. I haven't seen them in so long, so I run towards the pen. They look just as happy to see me as I am to see them, and they let me into the pen. We start talking, and to my surprise, one of them pulls out a blunt out of nowhere and sparks it. I am naturally amused but shocked. Then they start to explain to me that they came to see me because they all got into the game and don't think drugs are that bad after all. On the outside, I am
not smoking pot. That's awesome. Being straight edge though, and not being friends with your homie because they're on pot, like do pot, like that's stupid. You know these boys are probably dropping back brewskis too, doing fucking, or they're straight edge, so probably not, but they're probably like fucking popping ibuprofen every chance they got. You know, you just fucking fiending on that shit, caffeine, fucking vapes, and all that.
Pleased to hear this, but on the inside, I begin to get feelings of untrust. These bastards abandoned me years back. I don't show any unpleasant feelings on the outside, and I continue to be cheery with them, although I keep a state of mind not to trust anyone there. They pass me the blunt, and I take a super long hit, and hold it super long and blow out. After it went around a few times, we all spark a cigarette to increase our high. We just keep talking and talking. It seemed like time has stopped. How long can people just sit here and talk? It's been hours, I think to myself. Strangely enough, I am still puffing on the same cigarette. I don't notice anything unusual about it. Then I drop my butt, and it falls under the chair I'm sitting on. Ah shit, I said, and got out of my seat to get it. I look under the chair, but I can't seem to find it. Did any of you see where as I turn around, I notice no one is there, and I am alone in the pen. A sense of anger comes over me, and I get intense feelings of, I shouldn't have trusted them, and how dare they. These feelings are followed by loneliness and then total fear. I need to get out of this pen and go back in the house. I walk back to my house across the long field, and it seems to take even longer to go back than when I had come. Next thing I know, I'm back in my kitchen lying on the floor, very sweaty. Steve is there sitting on the kitchen counter. My focus is very blurred and off, and I feel very confused about why he's there on the counter and I'm on the floor. But every few moments, I kinda snap back into reality and know exactly what's going on. Then snap back into delirium and totally forget everything. Next thing I know, it's already 6:46 a.m. and I am running late. My mom tells me I only got a half hour to get ready or I'll get a Saturday detention. I scramble out of bed and get into the bathroom.
That way he's gonna go to school on
I suddenly realize how much school's gonna suck because I forgot to do my homework and I have an oral presentation due today. All these thoughts make me panic, and I know there's no way out of it because I already skipped school 3 times this year and got caught, and I can't skip another day or I will have to go to court. I get out of the shower and dry off as quickly as I can. Then I run into my room and get dressed and go downstairs to the kitchen. Right then, I noticed something was wrong. The clock said 1 a.m. and the calendar was on July. Nobody was up. My mom was asleep and had been asleep. She didn't wake me up for school. I did not have school in the summer. I wished I was dreaming, and the thoughts in my mind were on the brink of driving me insane. All I remember after this is running back up into my room in total panic, ready to cry and scream, and if one more weird thing happened, I was gonna off myself. I woke up in my bed with Steve on the floor watching me. He looked very concerned and asked me if I was okay now, if I was still tripping. I didn't know what to say to him, because right then I could have still been tripping for all I know. It was 5 p.m. the next day. I had a bad headache and couldn't focus on anything. My whole body was in this dreadfully uncomfortable state. It took me a while to collect my thoughts and figure out I was not tripping anymore. And I had these series of strange, realistic dreams stuck in my head from when I was asleep, but I can't for the life of me remember what they were now. I forgot them completely about 4 hours after I woke up. From Steve's point of view, in a nutshell, I had started acting weird when I had gotten the water from the kitchen. He said that he was trying to talk to me, but I would just have this blank stare like I couldn't see him. And then I ran outside into my shed in the backyard and started talking to myself. And after an hour or so, I ran out of the shed with this scared shitless look on my face and fell down and crawled back into the house, into the bathroom, and he said I was trying to drink out of the toilet. He pulled me up and carried me into the kitchen and put me down on the floor and got me some ice. He said I was talking in my sleep and saying random words in no logical order whatsoever, but I was saying them fluently, like I knew what I was talking about. Before my mom came home, he carried me upstairs and put me to bed and stayed up to watch me. And he said I was talking out loud and moving around like I was having some nightmares. And around midnight, I sprang out of bed and ran into the bathroom and got in the shower for an hour. And then I went back into my room and put on a shirt backwards, some boxers, but no pants, and ran downstairs and stood in the kitchen for 10 minutes, just standing there. He said then I was freaked out and ran upstairs into my room, and he said he had to push me onto my bed and hold me down until I stopped moving and eventually fell asleep. Then he did. He woke up around 10 that day, and I slept until 5. To sum it up in one word, insanity. That's what it feels like when you start to snap out of it and realize what's happening. But then you just go back into this state of total confusion, and it's enough to drive anyone crazy. Overall, I'm glad I experienced this just to know what it's like.
I'm chill with it, you know? It was fucking awesome. Dude, that's the through line. Nobody regrets doing it. They're like, don't do it, but it low-key turned my life around. You know, my life is good now. We're fucking, I was a fucking drug addict, but now, you know, I got a good-ass job. You know, this guy, dude, the guy who did it, they were like, oh, dude, he never changed. He's all spiritual now. Oh, yeah? Fucking doesn't he have a thriving business? He owns a bunch of crypto coins and shit. I got an echo. Why do I have an echo? Maybe it's on your end. Hold on.
This is not for everyone.
I got an echo.
Here comes up. Can be found on Reddit. Getting dry, very similar to the cottonmouth after smoking a blunt. Steve is where and 6:40 in my sleep and saying random words in no logical order whatsoever. But I for an hour, and then I went back and then I'm glad I experienced this just to know what it's like.
I'm chill with it, you know? It was fucking awesome. Dude, that's the through line. Nobody regrets doing it. They're like, don't do it, but it low-key turned my life around. You know, my life is good now. We're fucking, yeah, I don't know. Huh.
And I'm not saying the experience was at all pleasant, so I have no motivation to do it again anytime soon. Maybe some years from now, just for some crazy fun. But this Datura seems to be something not of this world. The hallucinations were accompanied by delirium and confusion.
That's just a straight evil hack.
And like I wasn't really tripping. This stuff truly is made by the devil. Nightmares in flux.
Okay. I'm gonna call it here. Thank you, baby. My one viewer. I love you. I'm gonna go get some stuff for my ears. Clean my little ear holies. I love you, baby. I love you, chat, too.